And so, let me get us over here right now. So we're gonna start off with the running backs because it seems like it's kind of cut and dry, but it just comes down to preference. The two of the top names, Najee Harris from Alabama, Etienne. And before we even rank them, I just want to ask, just from what you've seen and what we've seen in recent years. I mean, last year we only saw one running back drafted in round one, and that was Clyde Edwards-Helaire at the end of the first round. And to be honest, probably a year later, looking back, probably not the best back of his class. So I want to ask you, John, before we break everything down, do you think that running back will be taken in the first round?
I think one will be, and a large part of that to me is some of the teams in the draft that need running back. Um, in sort of that back end of the first round, I think a lot of those teams could use running back, but also there's a few teams in there like the Dolphins or the Jets who could also use running backs, and they have multiple picks. So I think one will be picked in the first round. I wouldn't be shocked if the top two guys, who I assume both of us have as the top two, are both picked in the first round. That being said, if I'm an NFL GM, I wouldn't do it. Um, I mean, as a Cowboys fan, everyone knows about Ezekiel Elliott, and he's a really good player. Don't get me wrong, one of the best running backs in the whole league when the line's healthy and they got the full offense. But as we've seen over and over with other teams, you can get running backs in the fourth, fifth, sixth, even like if you want to go early, you can get them in the second, third, and you're getting premier talent that are great. So yeah, I don't know if I'd take a running back in the first round, pretty much in any draft at this point. And it seems like most years over the last like 5 years, there's been some running backs like Christian McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley or Elliott or all these guys who people, you know, they're going top 10, right? Even like Saquon, he went number two. Um, but at the same time, does that contribute to winning as much as some other positions? I don't think so in today's current NFL. So long answer, but yeah, I think there will be one in the first round, but I don't think there should be just based on position value.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the similar boat with you, but so personally, I think that there's one first round talent for a running back for sure. Now, will he get taken the first? I agree with you. Like I wouldn't if I was a GM, but who knows? I mean, we may have. I mean, remember a few years ago, Seattle took Rashad Penny. It was a surprise kind of pick at the end of the first. So there may be a team that's just really in love with, especially maybe my guy or one of the other running backs, like you mentioned, like the Jets or Miami. They may be afraid that a team like Atlanta may take him at in the second, early in the second, because they have the fourth and the second, and just pull the trigger then. Um, but it's just tough because of the. I think we mentioned before. Just I think just you, the shelf life of the running back in the NFL, especially nowadays, is just so short. Yeah, it's only really the rookie contract, unless you're a McCaffrey. But even then, like we've seen, Ezekiel Elliott, well, it's still to be determined, but not looking great after the extent, not looking like what he was in his rookie, on his rookie deal. Same thing with Todd Gurley. I mean, granted, that was a little bit of a outlier too. Had that freak knee injury that's just really crept up on him, all this knee surgery. So I mean, we'll see how it goes. I mean, there's Alvin Kamara just signed his extension, so maybe he's going to set the trend. But I mean, we've seen a lot of great running backs, at least in the past decade. Jamal Charles. Trying to, maybe Arian Foster. Seen a bunch of guys have their 3 or 4 years and then just I don't want to say flame out, but it just goes downhill for them because it's such a physically demanding position. But we'll see if any of these guys can last. So we'll go right into it. I really only have three that I felt comfortable ranking. And like I said, only my first guy is the one I feel is a first rounder. The other two are probably second, day two ish. You want me to start, or you want to go ahead with your three, number three?
Uh, how about you start?
Okay.
I have like four ish, but I'll just give the fourth guy an honorable mention.
Yeah, I'll mention him too. So my fourth guy was Javian Hawkins, Louisville. He reminded me a lot of Darren Sproles, very explosive. And his only issue is that kind of like what people would say with Devontae Smith, but I feel like this is more his size is more a real issue for him because he's a running back. But yeah, gives me Darren Sproles, Tariq Cohen vibes. Can catch out of the backfield. He can run up. He can maybe run in between tackles, but really he's going to be an outside the tackles runner. Going to be a change of pace back. Obviously, I don't see him going in the first 2 rounds. Probably not in the third round. Maybe at the end of the third round. But I feel like he could be definitely a guy that's a team could get. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Um, Maybe in Kansas City, just to offset Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But this, he'll be a number two back, but he's going to be an explosive playmaker as long as he stays healthy. But he would be my number four. But my number three is going to go to Michael Carter of North Carolina. Um, he My only issue with him is not a lot of top end speed. I feel very good on his feet, great agility. He runs with good power and runs. He enjoys contact. He's an old school kind of runner, but he has enough agility to make a guy or two miss. Also, he's solid in the pass game and solid in pass protection. I just feel like he's more of one of those guys that's a high floor, but not as high ceiling as maybe my first two guys. But regardless, I think he'll be a solid day two pick. Once again, team like the Falcons or the Jets, maybe the Jets don't get their guy, day one or on the first round, then maybe they can get him in the second round, or another team that needs him back. But he's going to be more of a in between the tackles kind of runner, like a Josh Jacobs light coming out. So that's what I have at number three. Um, Michael Carter from North Carolina. Not the other North Carolina running back, Javonte Williams, who was close, but not close enough for me. But who do you have for your number three, John?
Well, my honorable mention, my number four ish kind of guy. I could hear arguments for other people though. For me, which it's a little biased because I've watched him the most out of any running back in this entire class, is Chuba Hubbard out of Oklahoma State. Um, the concerns that I do have with him is number one, in pass protection, he's pretty terrible, which a lot of people overlook. But in the NFL, the current day, with how much passing goes on, you have to be able to pass protect. Because if you can't, you become a bit of a liability. Obviously, you don't have to be, holding off defensive linemen, but you have to have the IQ to, step in front of the open blitzer and, take them out. So,
And the
uh,
willingness too. That's part of it.
yeah, and the
That's
willingness.
like
Got to
half
put
the
your
battle.
body on the line. So he's pretty terrible at that. Also, there are some injury concerns, and last season he did have, I wouldn't say a down year, but it wasn't necessarily the same potency as 2019. 2019, it looked like he was probably going to be the second or maybe even first running back taken, which at this point we didn't have some of the names, clearly established like we're going to bring up today. But I mean, he took the nation by storm with his 2019 end of the year. I believe he led the entire nation in rushing that year. Obviously, like I said, saw a bit of a decline in 2020. So there is, some concerns because he has had some injuries throughout his career, had some durability issues, the pass protection, all that kind of stuff. But I think if he can get past that, I don't see him going top two rounds. But maybe he sneaks into the third, probably fourth. I think that he could be really solid. I think there will probably be some guys that are going to get drafted over him that I think he's better than. So that's my honorable mention. My third guy, which I actually think it's really interesting, that what was the guy's name that you just said for North Carolina?
It was Michael Carter. Do you have Javonte Williams as your
Michael
third?
Carter. Yeah. My number three is Javonte Williams, who played opposite of him. Uh, I wasn't super familiar with Michael Carter. I didn't watch a ton of North Carolina.
That's okay. I
I
didn't
did
either.
see some of his highlights and all that kind of stuff, and I have watched a few of their games. Um, so I can't say that I'm like super knowledgeable about him, but Javonte Williams, to me, he was typically the guy that stood out when I did watch the games that they played. And I think the separation there for me was a little bit more the size. I mean, they're both smaller backs, which you don't have to be big. In the NFL, we've seen plenty of running backs. But Javonte Williams is just a little bit bigger, and it feels like he's a little more built for the NFL. I don't know the actual like weight and height difference that they have between them. Um, but yeah, it just feels like that size that he does have is more the prototypical NFL running back that we're going to see. And also it feels like between the two, like you said with Carter, it feels like he's going to be that sort of Darren Sproles like role that you mentioned that a lot of teams are going to covet. But does that make him a three down running back where teams are going to want to use him in all these different kind of situations? I just don't know if he has that same versatility that I feel like Javonte Williams can have. Um, but I don't know. Overall, the running back class is just kind of weird for me because ultimately, the top two guys that I have, I'm very sold on. The rest of the guys, I'm not as familiar with. Number one, but I'm not as sold on either because running back's always one of those groups that there's a lot of talent. It's really deep, but how many of those guys translate to the league, you don't know. I feel like running back's one of the harder positions to judge in that regard because I mean, like I feel like in the NFL at least, there's so many running backs that become really good that were not highly touted in the draft. I mean, even with Aaron Jones on your team, like he
Fifth
was
round
not a guy
pick.
that everybody was super high on, and then all of a sudden he became good. And there's so many running back stories like that in the league.
Yeah, just real quick. Yeah, in regards with that, I just feel like running back's tough because it's just like preference, especially when you go into the
Yeah,
ranking, and it's tough because conference. Like the reason I didn't really have Hubbard high was because Oklahoma State barely ran the ball because it's the
yeah,
Pac-10 or not Pac. Let me say Big
Big
12.
12.
It's they're just gonna throw the ball. Then when they do run the ball, it's because okay, there's three guys in the box. Let's run the ball. So
Yeah,
it's tough. It was tough for him to get evaluation on guys like him because they don't get as many chances as well, I imagine we'll talk about like a Najee Harris or even these North Carolina guys who run more of a pro style offense. So there's a lot more pro concepts, but also a lot more carries. Um,
right.
so yeah, I hear what you mean. So and yeah, I did like Javante, and I'll let you get back to you can do number two real quick. Um, I just felt like Carter a little bit more speed and agility, and once again, but like I just said, it's just preference at this,
Right.
and especially with these after the first two, really, and even the first two, I feel like we're gonna have a little bit of difference, and that's gonna be because of preference. But sorry, yeah, go ahead. You had Javante Williams from North Carolina at three. Who is your number two?
My number two actually might surprise some people because based on most mock drafts, and actually, I wonder if this is your number two as well.
I know someone's gonna
Um,
be upset. Are we gonna have the same person creep up to in our DMs? And I feel like we are.
My number two is Najee Harris
Yeah.
from Alabama. Um, I think he's a great running back. I think he if I had to bet on one player that's going to go in the first round out of this group, I think it would be him because it seems like most people are a lot higher on him than the other guy that we're going to mention, Travis Etienne. Spoiler alert. But to me, Najee, he's a great running back. A lot of good things that you can see, but the one main concern that I do have about him is he's really big, which is not a bad thing. He's like 6'2". I don't know his exact weight, but he doesn't play to his size. There was just a lot of times where I felt like he was bouncing runs to the outside instead of number one trusting his offensive line and going through the holes, but also being willing to use that 6'2" frame, that big body of his to go up against these linebackers because he's built like one. And that's not a bad thing, but ultimately it just feels like there is a sort of like a mindset difference in him that maybe he feels like he's that sort of speed, shorter guy like some of these other guys in the class. But when you have that size, I mean, if he can put it all together, you're looking like a Derrick Henry, right? He's 6'3", he's fast, he's powerful, that kind of stuff. Najee, I think he's really good, but I just don't think that he utilizes the skills that he does have completely, and that's absolutely something that can be fixed. So, I mean, this isn't the only reason that I have him ranked number two, and it's something that I'm harping on. But I just do have some concerns about how he wants to play because, like I said, a lot of times it seemed like he would bounce, runs the outside, and when you're a big, powerful guy, he wasn't using even when he got to that outside, he wasn't using that physicality that he could have against some of these smaller corners or safeties or linebackers.
Yeah. So spoiler alert, I do have Najee as my number two as well. And yeah, I agree with really a lot, especially what you brought your first point. It's like he's trying a lot of the times he tries to be a finesse back when he's not built like a finesse back, and it's tough because then I'm like, are you not that powerful? Are you not confident in your ability to maybe run a guy over, run a DB over? Um, because even though he does try to be a finesse guy, he's obviously not going to be the. I think he has about average to above average speed. But yes, that was a concern of mine. Just like you mentioned, him bouncing to the outside because he had a lot of holes in Alabama. That's a pretty good old line. Like we'll talk about their center later, but they're a really darn good center. We know that Jedrick Wills last year, one of their other tackles is probably going to get drafted in the first 3 or 4 rounds. And we just know Alabama's good at running the ball. And I got I got a lot. I see. I didn't watch his college tape coming out, but when I did watch Trent Richardson, I got Trent Richardson vibes. You remember? I think especially fancy people, we all remember him. Just because his biggest issue was when he got to the NFL, he couldn't read the hole. Now I think Najee's going to be better than that, but I'm just afraid, like you said, the mindset. I feel like he's still, especially, he's going to have the mindset of a finesse back bouncing it out when he just needs to take the 2 or 3 yards that he has. Um, Otherwise, though, like I said, like you kind of mentioned, pretty well balanced back, a good blend of power and speed. I would like to see him use that power a little more. I think he's a solid receiving back. Um, I think he'll be a solid running back, definitely in the NFL. But I just don't envision, personally, I don't envision him being at the Derrick Henry level. Maybe a tier or two down. Maybe being just an RB1, 1,000 yard guy, which there's no shame in that. I mean, if you can get a running back that can do that, that's great. But just yeah, I have had some worries in regards to that. But hey, that could easily be fixed. Those are things that you can usually coach up. So yeah, that's why I have him at number two. But number one goes to Travis Etienne. I mean, it was like watching Alvin Kamara, with Clemson. I mean, he did a lot of passing stuff at Clemson, receiving out of the backfield. I know it was not necessarily a pro style system, but when he did run, he ran with great burst through the hole. When he saw the hole, he you know was going 100 miles per hour. He was going 100% right. I thought he has a great ability to do that, and because of that, also it shows off his great acceleration. I mean, within like three or four few steps, he's already full speed. Um, and he has decent enough size. He can run in between the tackles and take that. I believe that he can take that, be the bell cow back for the most part. But he's definitely going to be Kamara type. He'll be best utilized as a Kamara type, where he's going to probably get 10, 12 carries, but he's going to get like six, seven receptions for 80 yards. So yeah, he's definitely a weapon, and he's definitely like I said, my favorite back, but he's definitely fitting of the modern day NFL, of the Christian McCaffreys we're seeing, the Dalvin Cooks, the like I just mentioned, Alvin Kamara's, even Aaron Jones, like you mentioned, just a speed guy, the guy who's quick enough, but also has receiving skills, and I think he's solid enough in pass pro that he'll be fine. So yeah, it was kind of tough, but Etienne, I just couldn't find as many flaws in Etienne as Najee. And once again, like I said, for preference, just I feel like he fits a lot more offenses than a guy like Najee would. So that's why he is my number one, and I'm assuming he is your number one as well, John.
Yeah, he is not a whole lot to add. The one big thing that made him stand out for me was number one. He's faster than most of the running backs you're going to get
Yeah.
in these first 3, 4, 5 rounds. This running back class doesn't really have, which this is sort of becoming more normal. But there's not a lot of running backs that are coming out that are like super incredibly fast, because typically if you're that fast, you're probably going to be switching to receiver. But he has that sort of quickness that's a level above most of the running backs in this class. But the main thing was just the receiving ability. I think he's far and away the best receiver out of the running backs, um, just because. I mean, he did it so much, but also this past year, he showed an improved physicality so that once he did get the catch, obviously we know his speed, we know his agility, we know all these things, but once there is contact, what are you going to do? And I think he showed a lot of being able to fight through that contact, because, when you're going against these corners and these safeties downfield, that's your time as a running back where you're going to have the best matchup size wise to actually, go against somebody. So I thought he showed, improved ability there. And like you said, I think he fits more into the current NFL offenses than anybody else in this class, because he can be a 3 down running back. He can, go up the hole. He can bust it outside. He can in the receiving game. He can do pretty much anything you want. I think that versatility, that's to me, that's the most important thing in the NFL these days, because although we are starting to see, a lot of these, running back rooms like the Saints had with Mark Ingram and Kamara, or the 49ers always have, or just all of the Browns, like all these different teams are getting multiple running backs. I mean, the key there is if you can have a guy who can be really versatile and you can use him in multiple ways, then the team can't, the other, opposing team, the defense, they can't focus in on, okay, this is their receiving back. We know they're probably going to pass. This is their power guy. He's going to come up the middle. They can't do that against you. And so that's why we saw, certain teams it works really well. because for the Browns, we know Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are both very good at a variety of things. So I feel like Travis Etienne, to me, he's the most versatile back. And yeah, he fits the best in most offenses in the league, which is why I think he's the best in the class. Like I said, I wouldn't be super surprised if Najee goes before him because, like you mentioned at the beginning, it's really just preference and what the team feels is the best fit for them.
Yeah, so teams like it will be tough because it depends on what the team's plan is and how they feel the board falls. Like I said, a team like Pittsburgh, if they see if linemen are going off the board, in a hurry, I forgot what I think it picks like at 16. Regardless, in the teens. Regardless, if they see or no, it's not. It's in the 20s.
They're probably
Okay,
like 19,
I think
20,
they're in the 20s.
21,
My
somewhere.
apologies. They're in the 20s, but still, a run at offensive lineman up before their pick. They may be like they may have wanted to get a running back, but then say, shoot, well now we have to we need to get a lineman before they run out, and we'll have to get whoever's in the second round. Same thing with maybe Atlanta in the second round at 4. So and like we just mentioned, Miami has multiple picks, so maybe you know they'll be in the conversation for a back if things fall that way. But yeah, I do agree with you everything you said with ETN, and we'll have to see. But I mean, we'll do our mock and we'll see how that goes. Obviously, we'll review Mel Kiper's mock. I actually forgot where he put Najee. I think he did give him to the Steelers. I don't know. I forgot. I kind of breezed over that. But anyway, so that wraps it up for the running backs. Now we're gonna get to